Hi, it's John at Cloud Formations. We're going to be taking a look at Materialized Lake Views, how you can use them, how they may fit into your pipeline, and some of the benefits that you might get. So let's have a quick look. So here's the Microsoft Learn announcement. It is in preview at the moment, so some features may change. Just go through what they are and get started, how to monitor some tutorial stuff. I'm going to show you what some of the features are. So what are lake views? Well, basically views with data. The sort of hybrid tables view, so you sort of define like a view, but they store data like a table. So that's basically what they are. If you're familiar with CTAS, create table as selector, sort of like that. So let's take a look at how they work. So we're very familiar, should be very familiar with views. You have a user, queries the view. When you query the view, it queries the underlying objects that the view contains. So you query the underlying tables. So the compute process runs, it returns the data back to the view object and back to the user. That's how it sort of works. Materialized Lake Views operate slightly differently. As I say, the hybrid table stroke view. So you declare the logic in your lake view, you run it, it then goes away to the underlying tables, gets the data, returns it to the lake view, and when you query it, you're querying the lake view. It's not having the other compute to go to the underlying tables. So they don't automatically refresh when base tables update. So that could be updates going to the underlying tables, the Materialized Lake View won't refresh. You have to run a refresh process, and I'll show you how to do that shortly. So one of the good things about Materialized Lake Views is you can build these up from tables. Materialized Lake Views can build other tables. So you can have a quite orchestrated data layer process of querying data, bringing it into some form or object, transforming it, then bringing it to another layer, and so forth and so forth. So you could have, in effect, your bronze, silver, and gold process running by Materialized Lake Views. However, I probably wouldn't recommend that. Probably for some interesting views or transformations, you could use Materialized Lake View. I think mainly because you can't orchestrate it very well in your typical data pipeline. So here's a notebook I've already got set up. I've got some tables in the DBO schema, and I've already created a schema called MLV for the lake views. Now, it's a very straightforward process to create your lake view. Create Materialized Lake View if not exists, give it your name, and then you have a select statement as well. You can use CTEs, but this is a very basic example. You can also do some updates regarding partitioning. It does create a delta object underneath. So yeah, we can see there's nothing under MLV at the moment. Hit run, and that query will go and get the data from the sales quota, dim employee, dim date, and sales territory. Basically, I'm flattening out things maybe for a report, and that's where I think they may excel at, is flattening things out, having a reporting layer, and you can use Materials Lake Views off your data warehouse to provide very report specific items. Cool, that's run. Okay, gives you a little bit of output of the ID, full refresh, refresh date, timestamp, and total rows. So if I just click refresh here, there you go, there's the sales quota. So you create like a table. I'm saying it's not going to the underlying items underneath, it's just literally getting the data stored in the new delta table, which you've declared via a bit of SQL query. Cool. And you can manually refresh these items using a bit of SQL, or you can wrap it up in a bit of Python using the Spark SQL, and away you go, and it will refresh the data. So every time you run a refresh, it goes against the latest data. So you just have to be careful to orchestrate things so data isn't remaining stale. So for scheduling, you've got the typical scheduler. But if you're using the Managed Materials Lake View, you have to remember that when you refresh your Materials Lake Views, you're refreshing all the items in your Lakehouse. So anything that's shown in that lineage will be refreshed. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 or 20 items, they will all be refreshed. There's no selectivity of items. There's no way you can have a couple of defined items in your process to refresh. They will refresh all at the same time. You can refresh via the Fabric API. So if you do have a standard data pipeline, you can hit the Fabric API and it'll hit this lineage refresh, or you could have a separate schedule in the interface just for the Materialized Lake Views. So in the Materialized Lake View, you should be the familiar experience from the regular Fabric pipelines, the scheduler. As I say, you can't really orchestrate it with your normal data pipelines unless you call the job from the Fabric API. And just give you details here, the Fabric API, where you have to have your workspace ID and Lakehouse ID, and that will run the on-demand job, which will refresh everything. And then you may need to poll the API to make sure this is finished before kicking anything off. And you can do that with listing the job instances, get the job instance details, combination of those to get the item instance, and then keep on polling it to see what the status is. Is it in progress? Has it completed? Once it's completed, then your process could move on. One of the annoying things about Materialized Lake Views is they appear under tables. So I'm not quite sure why they've called them Materialized Lake Views. I can see what the logic is behind them, but maybe Materialized Lake Query would have been a better sort of naming. But it is just a little bit of annoyance that it is found under tables. I hope you found that useful. A nice overview of Materialized Lake Views. If you've got any questions or comments, put them in the comments below. Thank you.